Welcome to the Art Gallery of Hamilton's Storytime. I'm so glad you could join as this has been an olive, and we are so happy on this beautiful spring day to be sharing a story with you. We're going to be exploring textile art, or another term is fiber art. And our exploration has been inspired by Mac Barnett's story called Extra Yarn. And it's illustrated by Jon Klassen. And this was published by HarperCollins. On a cold afternoon, in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars too. But there was still extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet!" shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone! Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out she could, and she did. Even one for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. She knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton and Mrs. Pendleman, and for Dr. Palmer, and one for little Louie. She made sweaters for everyone except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat, and even then Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats, and for other animals too. Soon people thought, soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. Things began to change in this little town. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, an archduke, who was very fond of clothes, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1 million. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. $2 million, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10 million, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. So that night, the Archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house and they stole the box and took it to the Archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea back to his castle. The Archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted its lid and he looked inside. His mustache quivered. It shivered. It trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out of the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But it turned out she was. The end. I liked that story. I liked that Annabelle's town became so colorful once she got that magical box of yarn.
I'd say she became a textile artist. Now, textile art is when you use natural fibers like wool and cotton, twine, sisal that you get from plants, animals, and insects. Can you guess where Annabelle's yarn came from? Did you say sheep? You could be right. Probably a magic sheep. But it could have been a yak, or a llama, or a camel. All kinds of animals that we get wool from.
I'd like to share with you a couple of examples of textile art from our permanent collection. So let's go take a look.
Our first example of textile art or fiber art is by Canadian artist David Merritt. David has taken a sisal rope and painstakingly pulled it apart, arranging the threads to form kind of a cloud-like form that appears to float above the section of rope below. This is called The Camera's Eye by Joyce Wheland. Joyce Wheland was a painter, a filmmaker, as well as a textile artist, and she used the traditional forms of needlework and quilting, knitting, and embroidery in her arts practice. She deliberately set out to reclaim an undervalued art form that at the time was considered women's work. But she showcased the skill, inventiveness, and artistry in working with textiles.
I hope you get a chance to watch the video that we shared with you by AGH artist, educator, and theater maker Kelly Wolfe. She has created a video workshop on weaving and using extra pieces of yarn or other materials that you might have lying around your house to create a weave. And she shows you how to make a loom. And I watched that video and I got inspired myself to create a loom. You might want to watch this video with somebody that may be a bit older than you that is able to use bigger scissors, because the cutting in the cardboard is a little bit tricky. But once the loom is made, I think you can have a lot of fun weaving. But Kelly will share different ideas with you if you'd like to watch the video. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope perhaps this has inspired you to get a little creative with some fiber art. And I look forward to seeing you next time at AGH at Home's Storytime. Bye for now.